This is the interior, or dome light, from inside the car, which is a slightly over-engineered bit of kit. You've got your bezel in Bakelite with a aluminium trim, which appears to be polished aluminium. So this that you see on here isn't actually rust, this is just dirt that's been building up over the years. So middle piece just pops out, which gives you the Bakelite ring. You can see the little locating pegs, so you have a larger gap there for the switch, because this one operates on a switch at the light rather than at the doors. And then you have the little locating pegs to make sure everything's in the correct orientation. This is quite dirty. To release the lens here to get inside, you just twist it. This isn't just decorative around the edge, it gives you a little bit of grip. And you can see it has like a bayonet fitting slot on them. That's more what colour it should be, and that's what colour it is, so that's quite dirty. It's held to the roof with just 3 screws, and then go through the housing, and then there's usually a festoon bulb that goes in here. We removed it because we couldn't get this light to turn on or off visibly, so rather than risking it being permanently on and causing problems, we took the bulb out. But the switch mechanism is really overcomplicated. So on the back you have a rivet here, which is your pivot point, which is this section just here. And when you pull on the switch, there's a spring which seems to be both serves slightly as damping and both to force this part of the arm down. That arm pushes against a little insulation pad. I think it's a piece of rubber or similar, which then pushes on this copper leaf, so it can touch this copper leaf to complete the circuit. It's pretty overcomplicated, it seems, for the job it's doing. And there is one slight problem with this unit, which is that this little rivet post here seems to be a tiny bit loose. So sometimes when you flick the switch, it doesn't actually move these leaves in contact with one another. And you might be able to do something with that by just squashing this rivet down a tiny bit, but I'm not sure. You can see it's in need of a clean, and a bit of corrosion in there. But it's not too bad. These spring pieces on the outside, this is for holding the cover nice and tight, because that little peg there is the bayonet that the cover locks into, and then these springs just hold that up in place. So that's a nice feature. You can see all the grime of the decades on there, which we need to get rid of. Sometimes with the ultrasonic cleaner, the dirt it pulls off is quite dramatic. This is just one short run, and you can already see all the sort of brown caked on stuff is lifting, and it's much more like the inside, which also looked quite a bit brighter. So I'm going to give this a rinse, and I reckon with a wipe most of that's going to come straight off and this will end up looking like new. This one surprised me. This is the interior light, and most of the dirt on this seemed to be tar, so smoking basically. When I was wiping off the Bakelite, it was just coming off in this sort of horrible yellowy brown colour. But that's come up really nicely. Still got that little bit of a sheen. I'm not polishing this. I might put some wax on it just to protect it, but that's all I'm going to do. It's in really good shape, and you do have to be a little bit careful with Bakelite. You can't really use any aggressive cleaners on them. The inside of this cleaned up really nicely. The corrosion that was there that may have been causing a problem is gone. And the most startling piece is this polished ring here, which before was very obvious and looked quite rusty. It was all dirt. It was all just an accumulation of, well, I guess smoking dirt. And just years and years and years of the car existing. The actual lens has come up fantastically clean. I was expecting this to be quite dingy, and no, it's come up in this lovely sort of off-white. Yeah, I'm seriously impressed. I'm not often impressed by how well something comes out, because I'm used to things being a little bit subpar, but this one has definitely surprised me in a really good way. So I'm really happy about that. A really peculiar thing is once it's all together now, the little bit of polished ring there was really obvious before. You could really see it, and now you barely can. It's really, really subtle. So yeah, that's been my favourite bit of this so far. I'm really impressed with it. Looking forward to getting that back in the car. We've been having a problem with the interior light not working. I don't actually have a bulb that fits this one, but that's okay. I've got workarounds. Got a freshly charged battery, and I have my multimeter. On the interior light unit, the continuity we'll test here is the post where you screw one of the wires in here, and I'll go to the other side of the bulb socket because the switch breaks or makes the connection. The problem I do have is this rivet here is very, very worn. It could do with being replaced. I don't have the right stuff to replace it. I've done my best to tighten it up. It's better than it was, but it does mean that the connection where this pushes down on the leaf spring isn't as good as it could be. So this is with it open, and we shouldn't get any continuity at all. Yep, that's completely dead, which is what we want. And then with the switch on, it can be a little bit tricky. There we are. The connection isn't great on this unit. I don't think it ever will be. We'll probably put an LED bulb in here for safety because, well, they don't get hot in the way that an incandescent one does. And you can get warm white ones that are passable. So that's probably going to be one sensible upgrade. The problem on the mechanism is this rivet here, because we've got a whole world of play in that switch. That's not supposed to be like that. It's just worn out. I don't have any suitable rivets for that, unfortunately. But Pat can show you how that works. And you can sort of see how it's difficult to find the right spot for it to come on and off. But once you get it where you need it to, it's alright, but then, touch the switch, it loses contact. It's just the way it is. we're going to put this together as it is for now, and just, we know it's done. If we find a better one in the future, we'll fit a better one. If we find some proper rivets for it, we'll do that too. But it works well enough. Let's get it put in the car, I guess. Time to test the light unit in the car. Got it connected to the battery, and the battery is fully charged. And we've got it all wired up on the ceiling. And if Pat will do the honours, we'll show you it's not working. Like, at all. And we don't know why. Gonna have to do some troubleshooting. It could be a fuse issue. We don't know, but that's a bit annoying because we know that works. We've had it working. And yeah, we don't know what's going on here. Okay, it's always best to go back to basic principles, and we know on this car a lot of the time there's an electrical issue. It's dirty contacts. So we gave the fuses a good clean and cleaned the contacts in here. Not expecting very much. We then hooked up the battery, and now it works. So that's something that never worked when we got the car, which now works properly-ish. You find the sweet spot so it stays on when you let go. So yeah, it's a bit worn out. See, it works. When you get it just right and it doesn't realise the camera's on, it works. Finally got this trim up here tacked back in place, but I encountered a problem, which is the panel pins I've bought are too long. A couple of them have gone in really nicely, but quite a few of them haven't. They'd go to a certain point and then this would happen. So I'm going to have to pull some of those back out and put shorter ones in. It's fine, this actually keeps this trim safer than it has been before because it can't get knocked off now, it's out of the way. We're getting there. We really are. I just wish it was a quicker job than it is. Yeah. We're in the dark garage. I wanted to quickly do this without pushing the car out. So this is one of the old panel pins that I got. This is one of the panel pins that I'd got before, and it's too long. Now, when I took these rails off, there was a whole mix of different kinds of nails in here, and I wasn't sure which was the correct size. So I went and bought some shorter ones. Now I know these long ones are much too long, and these seem to be spot on. I've already put a few in here, and now I have to remove that wiggly one there and just finish tacking this down. This is just a quick job, but it just tidies away all of this mess up here. The B-pillar trim, we don't have one for this B-pillar. I will be making a new one, and that's not going to go on until after I've got the semaphores wired up. At the moment they're not connected. Thankfully the B-pillar trims screw on, they don't nail on, so they're a little bit easier to fit. And hopefully we don't need to go back in here and redo any of this. All the old ones pulled out, or rather the new ones I put in that were wrong. You can see the all kinds of shapes. The tricky thing is there's that many tacks holding the headlining on. Sometimes when you're nailing this piece on, you hit a tack and then it bends the one you're trying to put in. But there's a few in there. I might have used too many, I'm not sure. All I did was put enough in just to get everything nice and flat and secure, which it now is. Driver's side also done. Above here there's actually a break in this plywood trim. Now I couldn't get a thin enough plywood to replace this, and given the fragility of the wool, I didn't want to risk peeling the wool off and breaking that too. So all I've done is I've lined the break up as best I can and then nailed the original back on. It seemed the most sensible solution given what the car is. I can see a minor mistake here where the tacks went in a little bit high on that part of the headlining. I'm not going to do anything about that. I'm going to leave it. It's part of what this car is now. The more that I do with this headlining to try and chase perfection, the more I risk damaging it and having to redo the whole thing. Like the rest of the car, the headlining is not perfect. It's good enough, and it's dirty. It could do with a clean, but it's also a bit fragile when it comes to handling. So rather than try and improve how it looks now, we're going to leave it because it's complete and it's tidy enough. And maybe in the future we'll take all this out and redo it with fresh wood and fresh wool and fresh nails. For now it's not important. The really weird thing though is putting nails in your car. That's yeah, that's a bit strange and not something I'm at all used to. This B-billet trim we do have, which is great. That's going to provide us with the pattern for the other side. I cannot find any Rexine like this. I have been hunting and hunting, and I can't even find second-hand stuff. It seems to be when people retrim the interiors on these cars, nothing gets saved. And it's a bit frustrating because I only need enough to do the bottom half of one B-pillar. And you can just see there's a kick panel down here that's missing. There's supposed to be a kick panel down here. Apologies for the poor light. And I'm not entirely sure what it should look like. Most of the Lanchesters out there that survive have had the interiors retrimmed. They're not original anymore. The Rexine has worn out and people have favoured putting in brand new leather instead, which is fine, and in some cars I totally understand, but this one has so much of its original interior, we want to keep it that way. Now, on one of the forums, someone went to a classic car show where there was an unmolested Lanchester LD10, just like this one, but in burgundy. It looked to have had very little done to the interior at all, and it had the kick panels still in place. So if you're watching, Si, thank you for those pictures. They were very, very useful, and I'm glad you tagged me. The trouble is, I can't get any of this Rexine. Now I know they don't make it anymore, and I could use a modern leather, but it won't look right. And I could use a modern vinyl, and that definitely won't look right. And neither of those products will smell the same. One of the big things about this interior in this car is its smell, which is a very important part of it, is dictated by the materials it's made of. So the woolen headlining, the plywood backing on these shaped interior pieces, the leather of the seats, the Rexine on the door cards and on the back of the seats, the wooden trim. As soon as you start replacing these things, you start taking away that smell. And if you completely retrim with brand new leather, not only does it look odd because your textures are all wrong, it smells like a new car. And the last thing we want is this car to smell new. We want it to smell, well, like it does. Vaguely of engine oil and dry wood and well-worn leather, and the very peculiar smell that Rexine has, which is this slightly ozony electrical smell that a lot of early plastics have. If you've ever handled Bakelite, you'll know the smell I mean. For now, that's a job down. It's a minor job, but it does make quite a large difference to the interior. And of course, with things like the interior light all nicely cleaned up now, which cleaned up way better than I expected at all. We're getting there. We are getting there.